Hey, cruise team, welcome back. It's Coach coming back to you. I am Brad, I'm the host of Coach Cruise, and today we're going to talk about the 10 things that you should have done within 2 weeks or 14 days before your cruise. And we're going to talk about it right after this.
I just can't get away from a good time.
All right, so the number one thing, let's just get right into it because I have 10 things here. So we're going to try to knock these out really quick. But the number one thing is you need to be checked in. The way that check-in is working currently, this is being filmed at the end of March 2022. So we're still dealing with some of the COVID protocols and everything else like this, depending upon when you're viewing this. But typically it's 14 days. Now, if you are a VIP member, you may be able to check in as far out as 16 days, which will allow you a little bit early boarding time. But that's probably going to change in the very near future. So by the time you see this video, that might already be outdated. But you want to make sure that you're checked in within 2 weeks so you know exactly when your boarding time is, when you'll arrive at the port to get checked in and drop your bags off and everything else like that. And the other thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to print all those your boarding documents, not to mention any excursion documents that you might have. You want to have all paperwork printed out, ready to go, sorted, and ready for your trip. So that is the first of the 10 things that you should have done 2 weeks out from your cruise. Okay, so the second thing, if you've seen some of my things that you need to get done, or the most beneficial things to you enjoying your cruise, my number two thing, and none of these are necessarily in any specific order, but the second thing I have for you is to join your cruise's Facebook group. Sometimes there's more than one of them, but if you go on to Facebook, for those of you that haven't done this before, and you type in your ship, your cruise's ship's name, along with the date that you are sailing, chances are, I would say 99 times out of 100, you're going to see that somebody has started a Facebook page for your particular cruise. And generally, the closer you get, the more people will be in that particular Facebook group. So if you join within 2 weeks of cruising, chances are there's already a couple hundred, maybe several hundred people in that Facebook group. And you can ask them any lingering questions you might have about your cruise, about excursions, about the ship, about the food on the ship, about the food in the embarkation port. For example, the next cruise I'm going on is in New Orleans. So before, I headed out, I was asking people for recommendations on restaurants in the area. So things like that. So that is definitely one thing that you can do is join a Facebook page. Again, just type in your ship's name and the sailing date, and you will find your Facebook page for your group. Join it and ask any questions, and I promise you somebody's going to jump in and help you out. Okay, so number 3 is to know your ports. Know your ports, which is going to help you identify excursions that you might want to take. And 6 is going to be kind of tie into this, but we'll start with number 3. So know your ports. Now, many of you, especially newer cruisers, you are going on a cruise and maybe you're going to the Caribbean and you're going to visit some Caribbean islands you've never seen before. And you're excited about going on the cruise, you're excited about going to these particular ports, but you have no idea what you're getting into unless you've done some research on these ports. One of the easiest things to do is go to Google and type in top 10 cruise excursions for the port of Aruba, let's say, and you will get more than 10 excursions that are available to be purchased either through the cruise lines or separate vendors in the particular ports that you're looking up. And you can say, hey, that sounds like fun, or hey, that sounds like fun, and talk with whoever you're going with, whether that's a family member or a friend, and identify the things that you think will be the most fun in those particular ports. Now, keep in mind, most cruise ships, when they go into a port, they're only going to be there roughly 8 hours. So you have a condensed amount of time to get the most out of that particular island. If you don't go into the port with a plan, you may leave saying, wow, I wish we'd have done this, or wish we'd have done that, or, I wish we'd have got off the ship earlier, or something else like that. You definitely want to research the ports ahead of time to come up with a plan so you can maximize the time that you have in that particular port, which will help you get the most out of your cruise experience. Okay? All right, number 4 is a pretty easy one to do, but it is to have watched a complete ship tour of your ship that you're going to be cruising on. So let's say, for example, the next cruise I'm going to be going on is the Carnival Glory. If I go to YouTube and I type in Carnival Glory ship tour, I'm going to see probably a half a dozen tours of the ship that have been done by various cruise creators like myself. And I'm going to get an extensive look at all the places to eat on the ship, all the activities to do on the ship, the theater, where Guy's Burger is, where the water slides are at, where the Serenity Deck is at, how many whirlpools are available to me to enjoy, where the fitness center is, and so on and so forth. So you're going to get an extensive look on the ship. So when you get on the ship, you have a rough idea of everything that's already on the ship. Now, one of the things I've mentioned in several videos before is when I was a newbie cruiser, I would get on these massive cruise ships and, we would just enjoy the cruise ship so much, but maybe we didn't do a good job of walking the whole ship, and it would come down to the last 2 days, or maybe even the last day, maybe the last night before the end of our cruise, and we would find a particular location on the cruise. I remember one of my first couple cruises, we were on a Carnival ship, and we found the Serenity Deck on literally the second to last day before we were going to get off. And at the time we found it, we had already had dinner reservations or something like that for the evening. And then the next morning we were going to get off. So, a whole week that we could have enjoyed at least a day or two of the Serenity Deck, we blew it because we didn't do a tour of the ship. We didn't watch one ahead of time. That's something that can very easily be done. So go onto YouTube, do a complete ship tour of the particular ship that you're going on, so you have a lay of the land and you don't miss out on anything you think you might have wanted to do on the ship. All right. Okay, so number 5 is one that I highly recommend if you can pull it off, and just especially if you're flying, but even if you're driving, it can be difficult, is to research the city or the port where your ship is leaving from. So, for example, my port on my next cruise is New Orleans. So, aside from the great food, there are some great activities and great events, although the food is what I'll be enjoying the most of. But there's a lot of live entertainment, obviously, and things like that. So that's some of the research that I'm doing. But also, I want to do research such as, if I'm going to stay the night before, or we're going to stay the night before, what hotels are close to the port. If we want to stay close to the port, if we're not going to stay close to the port, then how is transportation going to work in the morning to make sure that we get to the port on time for check-in and things like that. So you want to make sure that you have that research done. Also, if you're driving, one question I get asked a lot is, hey coach, how much is parking for the week, for the particular. Now, to be honest with you, as I've mentioned several times before, my wife is a flight attendant, so we have the pleasure most of the times of flying into the particular city that we're, going to be cruising out of, and then we just take an Uber or Lyft or something like that. So I don't have as much knowledge on the parking, but for example, I heard, at least in regards to New Orleans, you can park right outside where the ship is docked, for roughly $85 a week. Now, obviously, that's going to vary from city to city, port to port, but that just gives you an example. So you want to have an idea of where your car is going to be if you're driving in, or if you're flying in again. You know what hotel. You want to make sure you have that booked at least 2 weeks in advance, and then the fun things that you can get into. You know, whether it's whether you're a foodie or whether there's some activity. You know, for if you're going to Florida and you want to see the alligators in the swamps or something like that, and take an airboat ride, or if you want to go fishing or whatever it is that you like to do, and extend that vacation by one day in your port of call, right? So, yeah, do some research on your port of call, whether you're driving, flying, make the most of that day that you get there in advance. And if you're not going to get there a day ahead of time, then make sure you have everything mapped out, at least in terms of where you're parking. As soon as you get off the airplane, you know, have your Uber, your Lyft, your shuttle, make sure all that stuff is organized, because the number one thing is you don't want to miss your ship, right? All right. Okay, so I said number 3 and 6 were going to kind of tie in together. Number 3 was know your ports excursion, know your ports, and number 6 is have excursions booked and planned and how to get there. Okay, so if you book through the cruise line, they're basically going to help you identify where your particular excursions are. They'll give you, you know, a map or directions of how to get there, or they'll have a meeting place where you're supposed to go and wait for the rest of your cruise party to get there, and then you'll go off on your particular excursion. Now, you know, another thing is for new cruisers in particular. Um, Obviously, the cruise lines aren't the only people that are offering excursions. Oftentimes, you can get a much better deal on particular excursions through outside vendors. And, you know, the cruise lines will tell you, oh, well, you know, we guarantee that you'll get back, and they try to scare you into basically not purchasing excursions from these outside vendors. What I tell everybody, and it's very true, is if an outside vendor doesn't get you back on time, they've basically destroyed their business. And they're going to get so much negative reviews and scare everybody into not, you know, booking an excursion with that particular vendor that, you know, like I said, they're essentially putting themselves out of business. They know what time the cruise leaves. They don't want you, you know, screaming and yelling at them for not getting them back on time. Most outside vendors are going to get you back at least an hour ahead of time, which is usually when the carnival excursions will get you back. In fact, oftentimes I've been on cruise ships, and the cruise excursions that get back the latest aren't the outside vendors, they're the actual carnival excursions. And maybe, you know, the carnival excursions take some liberty knowing that the ship isn't going to leave, you know, without their particular patrons. So maybe that's why they're later than the outside vendors. I don't know, or maybe the outside vendors just don't want to risk it. But chances are, you know, you'll be fine if you book an outside. I do it all the time. Never been left once. Never gotten back less than an hour early with an outside vendor. There was a private party that I got back late on one time, but that was kind of my fault for not insisting upon. But you know, outside vendors that have excursions, you'll be in good shape. So have those booked, planned, and how to get there. If it is an outside vendor, chances are someplace like Shore Excursion Air, they're going to provide you with detailed maps of exactly where you have to go when you get off the cruise ship, exactly where you'll meet, and everything's really well laid out, and you shouldn't have any problem. And you'll probably save some money, and the excursion itself will be less crowded. Okay, so number 7 is to start packing. Now, I'll be the first to admit I'm less than 14 days from my next cruise, and I have some things set out, but to say I have everything packed would be a lie. So I guess I'm being a little bit uh, dishonest here in saying that you should be packed, but you should have at least a list of the things that you're going to have packed, and you know, maybe have some things set out. Now that I do have, I have my bag out, I have some things that I know I'm going to take, and you know, I have some things sorted. What you don't want to do is wait to the last day or the last 48 hours and start packing everything, because inevitably what's going to happen is you're going to forget something that you really need. And hopefully it's something that you can purchase in one of the shops on board. But there's a good chance that you won't be able to purchase it, and you'll be like, oh, I forgot to bring my snorkel and mask, or oh, I forgot to bring sun spray, so you have to pay like 4 times the price on the ship, or you know, beg somebody to use some of theirs or something along those lines. So it's little things like that. You want to write yourself a checklist, make sure you're not forgetting anything. And the other thing is, when you pack early enough in advance, you may not overpack. That's one of the things I've tried to tell people is so many people pack too many clothes. I pack light. My wife packs light. My wife, Anita, she's a flight attendant, so she's kind of taught me this along the way. But there's so many clothes that you end up not even wearing. Now, we've advanced to the platinum diamond tier, and so they'll do our laundry, which is a great benefit. But they do have laundry available. So, for example, even before we became platinum, we would do our laundry on the ship. So I mean, there's some things that if you're going to go to the gym, for example, you're going to go to the gym. I mean, you can bring 3 sets of gym clothes or whatever, and then wash those, and then you have them for the second half of the week. Okay, so you don't need to bring as many clothes as that. And then in terms of outfits, I mean, it's a 7-day cruise, so I mean, if you have 7 different shirts, or for women, if you have 3 dresses, and then 4 different other combination of outfits or whatever, you're going to be fine. But then again, like I said, to each his own. You may want to have 3 outfits a day. Who knows? I'm not into all that. But even if that's the case, you can be organized and you can figure out everything, so you're at least not leaving stuff, in the closet that you never even wore, and saying, "Wow, why did I pack so much? I didn't even wear, half the things that I brought." So that's just a bit of advice. It might save you an extra suitcase, and you'll feel better about it, not knowing that you overpacked. Okay, so dining options. Now, this is another one of my big, I don't know, pet peeves. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but I really feel bad for the people that only eat in the buffet. Please don't do that. I hate that. Not to say that the buffet doesn't have some great food offerings or whatever else like that, but it's just part of the cruise experience, in my opinion. It's just my opinion. But I really feel like that's part of the cruise experience, to go to the main dining room, and enjoy a meal with your spouse or your family or your friends or whatever else like that. Typically, it's been my experience that the food has been better. Um, and there's formal nights on 6+ day cruises. There's usually at least, well, there's 2 formal nights, but on one of those 2 nights, for example, they're serving filet mignon and lobster tails, and you can have as many lobster tails as you can eat. So that's one great benefit to eating the main dining room. They're not giving you away lobster tails on the buffet. So that's just one particular example. And keep in mind, as far as your dining option goes, depending upon the ship and how new it is. For example, the Mardi Gras has like more restaurants than I can even count. But they have like Rudy's Seafood Grill. They have the steakhouse. They have Chi Chi Bang Bang, I think it is. And then they have on the Lido deck, they have Shaq's Chicken. They have Guy's Burger. They have some of the traditional restaurants that are on most of the Carnival ships. But you want to make sure that, like, for example, the steakhouse is on almost every Carnival ship, right? And if you're going to go to the steakhouse, which I highly recommend, it's $38 per person currently, and it's well worth it. For a comparable dining experience at a steakhouse, I always tell people you're probably going to spend at least $100 per person at a comparable steakhouse of quality and that dining experience. Here you're doing it for only $38. Wonderful experience. Generally, really, really good meal. I would say probably 9 out of 10 people that go to the steakhouse really, really had a good experience. I do hear, occasionally somebody saying, oh, it was okay or it wasn't that good or anything like that. But for the most part, most people are very happy with the value of the steakhouse and the quality of the experience and the food itself. So have your dining experiences lined out when you're going to dine in the main dining room, when you want to go to a specialty restaurant, and kind of have those things laid out ahead of time before you get on your cruise. And it makes it a little bit more convenient and make sure that you don't miss out on something. Okay, so number 9 is ship events. So, in your Facebook groups that I told you to join, now a lot of times you can ask some people, hey, what are all the events that are going to be on the cruise? And for example, Carnival has the mega deck parties, and they have the '80s night, and they have a '90s night on some ships, and they have the some ships, and then they have the white night parties, where everybody is wearing all white, or at least that's what you're supposed to bring. So some of these parties can be a lot of fun for a lot of people, and they really get into it. Some people really like to dress up in that '80s theme. Some people, bring their all white and really have a great time at those particular parties. So, one mistake that you can make is you can get on a cruise ship, and there's so much going on these cruise ships that there can be one of these parties going on, and you completely miss it. So you want to look on the ship's app. On Carnival, it's called the Hub app, and it will tell you what events are going on that particular day. So in the morning when you get up, you have your coffee or whatever, look at what's happening and scroll through, all the events that are going on that particular night, and they even have little designations where you can click a heart or whatever, so, or a star, to make sure you've identified that as something that you definitely want to do on that particular day, and it helps mark it off so you don't forget to do it. And again, that will be one way that you can make sure you don't miss any big event that you think will be a lot of fun, and you won't regret having missed it if you stay on top of it and do your research. And so that's not necessarily 14 days out, but again, if you're in one of those Facebook groups, chances are you can find out about these events ahead of time. So even 14 days out, you can know which events that you want to take part in, and possibly even what days those events will be taking place. But if not, you can certainly find out on the ship. Okay, and my last one, it's just an important one, is to have a budget. Okay, so for example, um, I am doing there's 3 ports on the next cruise that I'm going on. One of the ports, I'm going to go through a Carnival excursion, and the other 2 ports, I'm going to go through an outside vendor. So for the outside vendors, I printed up the itinerary, the meeting place, everything else like that. And I folded that up, put in an envelope. And also, for those outside vendors, I had to pay a small deposit ahead of time to reserve our spot. And then the rest I'm supposed to pay in cash. So for those particular excursions, along with the information that I put in the envelope, I'm going to put cash. And I'm going to have those envelopes set aside and with the cash and everything in it. And then I write on the outside, Belize, or write on the outside Roatan. And then when we get to those particular ports, I just pull that envelope out. If I have a hard time finding the meeting place or whatever, I look at my itinerary, I look at my directions, and figure it all out ahead of time. And then we just head right out. We have the cash in the envelope, everything's ready to go. And all we need to do is worry about, the towels and the sunscreen and everything else that we're going to bring in our bags, and any tip money and a little extra money that we may want to bring. So have that all set aside. And then the other thing is, you want to make sure you set aside money maybe for shopping. Or, as most of you know, with the exception of Disney ships, on your cruise ship, there's going to be a casino. If you like to gamble, that's something you might want to have a budget for, because if you go to the casino, it can really mess up your cruise if you lose a bunch of money, right? But if you make a budget and let's just say put $50 in the envelope and you have that for each day, and you go and you spend that, and if you lose it, you lose it. Hopefully you win, but it might keep you from losing more money than you had planned on spending, and use that as your entertainment expense. And yeah, so that will keep your spending under control and make sure you don't get off the ship being like, oh my God, what did I do? How much money did I spend? And feeling really bad about that. So those are the 10 things that I have for you. I hope you got something out of this video. I hope I gave you something that you may have forgotten about. For new cruisers, I hope I gave you several things. But for you veteran cruisers, sometimes it's good to hear some of these things over again. And maybe you've forgotten about something, or I gave it a little different of a spin, and you get a little something out of it. But so again, my name is Brad. I'm the host of Coach Cruise. And anyway, we have a ton of videos out. I think this is about our 90th video, I believe. And if you haven't already subscribed, I would love, love, love if you hit that subscribe button. Minimize my screen here before you close out the video, and you'll see that little empty subscribe button. Click it, fill that subscribe button up. And if you're already subscribed, which many of you are, I know, and thank you so much for that, but if you could hit that like button, that will help get this video out to more people. And the more people that see it, more likely the more people will subscribe, and we'll just keep growing, and we'll be a bigger, happier family. And also, finally, if you aren't already on the Coach Cruise Facebook page, that is a group that's growing almost as fast as our YouTube channel. But if you would like to join that, we would love to have you. We talk all things cruising, and it's becoming a bigger, better family each and every day. And we would love if you joined us there as well. So that's all I have for you today, cruise team. Great getting back out to you again, and I look forward to seeing you on a cruise soon. Take care.
I just can't get away from a good time.